Welcome to No Contest. You are here with Josh Kolsrud, Holland, Reid, and myself, Claudia King. We are a new podcast. Today, we are here for you true crime lovers because we're going to be talking about the recent ICE shooting in Minnesota. This one is crazy. Can't even believe that we're about to discuss this, but that's what we do here. So we're going to talk about the recent shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So she was shot by an ICE agent. The ICE agent is claiming self-defense, that he was in fear for his life. Other people are claiming that Renee was shot just because she was interfering with ICE investigations, and ICE didn't like that. Josh, give me your initial feeling when you first learned about this, and maybe from the first video that you saw.
Sure, and I'll approach this from, like, let's just imagine you're in an airplane looking 30,000 feet down, and that's kind of where I feel like we are with the facts in this case. Now, as a general principle, I have no problem with law enforcement enforcing the law. I think that in order to have a functioning country, you have to do that, and you have to do it fairly. And I think it's also fair to say that what ICE is doing in these heavily Democrat counties and states is has a tinge of politicalness. That is that there is a political component here, and I feel like you have people on both sides of the aisle who are looking for confrontations. You have people on the right with their views, and you have people on the left with their views, and you're coming to a clash of culture. And when you have a clash of culture, you see what happened with this young lady, who, and these are objective facts, who was looking for trouble in a certain sense, where she went to a location where she knew that ICE was going to be, and she was part of an organization in Minnesota that actively looks for locations where ICE is going to be in order to disrupt them. Now, that doesn't mean that what she was doing was illegal. That just means that she was going to where law enforcement was, and they were in an official process, and she wanted to insert herself in that process. Now, again, that is not illegal in itself, okay? So let's talk about specifically what we know right now. So this lady is a widower, from what I understand, and has 2 children and is currently married. And she went to this location in her SUV as the driver, and it looked like that somebody was in the passenger seat. And when they got to the location where ICE was in their official capacity, they were wearing their ICE uniforms. If you're driving by, you wouldn't have to ask yourselves, are these people law enforcement or not? Like, it would be, they're wearing their uniforms, that you can identify them as law enforcement ICE officials. And she parked her vehicle in a way that would not allow ICE to move out of a certain area. And again, according to video, then again, these are uncontroverted facts.
Right.
She didn't move the vehicle for approximately 3 minutes. And during that 3 minutes, ICE surrounded her vehicle and repeatedly told her and ordered her to move. Now, when law enforcement gives a citizen a lawful order, it has to be followed. Otherwise, there are steps that law enforcement can and will take in order to make sure that the person follows the order. And this is where the law gets a little in the gray area. Okay.
Yeah.
So the question about what happens next is whether or not the actions of the ICE official were lawful or not lawful. So let's go into that just for a second, okay? So we have the ICE officer. We'll just call him the shooter, okay, just for easier purposes. I don't know his name. I know that he's been doxxed, but I haven't looked into too much. But the shooter, okay, he was standing to the front left center of the vehicle, and at some point, the driver, she backed up a little bit and then went forward. And while she was doing this, the ICE officer had to move out of the way, but was hit by the vehicle. I don't know to what extent. And within that split second timing, he shot 3 times and ended up killing the driver. Now, here is where the analysis must be done objectively and responsibly. The question is going to be this: is the ICE officer, the shooter's actions, were they reasonable under the circumstances? Well, how do we determine reasonableness? Well, we actually have a test. There was a Supreme Court case authored by Elena Kagan, a Barack Obama appointee, and it says that in these scenarios, the objective person is where the officer was standing. So, and it's a police officer. It's a reasonable person in the police officers or law enforcement eyes. It's not a layman's eyes, right? It's not somebody with no experience. It's with this officer's experience. Was his actions reasonable? And this is actually going to come out in 2 different cases. You're going to have a civil case he's going to get sued, and so is ICE. There's no question about it. And then he could be charged criminally. Now, you say, well, how can he get charged criminally? He's a law enforcement officer. Well, he can, and he probably will. And he could get charged by either the state or he could get charged by the feds. Now, this is where things are going to get a little bit exciting, because you have these state officials who have indicated that they would like to go forward with prosecuting this officer for murder. Whereas you have the federal side saying that they do not want this person prosecuted for murder. And initially, the FBI was going to give the case to law enforcement, but they decided through what's called the Supremacy Clause to take the investigation into their own hands. So the FBI, surprisingly, is handling this investigation because they say they have the jurisdiction because it's a federal officer. So this is the ultimate question that a judge is going to have to decide, whether or not it's state or federal. And this could mean life or liberty for this officer. So here's the question. Was the officer's actions, were they done in his official capacity as an officer? Or were they so unreasonable that this was not in his official capacity? So if the state judge, then a federal judge, determines that his actions were not in his official capacity, he will get prosecuted in the state of Minnesota by a state prosecutor and a state jury. However, if a judge determines that it was in the capacity of his job, he'll be prosecuted by a federal prosecutor and a federal jury, which will be much more favorable to the ICE shooter. So without giving my opinion about right or wrong, these are the 2 competing sides to the arguments.
Let me ask you this, and then Holland, I'll flip to you because I know you got stuff to say. Josh, you mentioned the eyes of reasonableness and looking at it from the person in his shoes, a law enforcement officer, et cetera, et cetera. We know that this particular officer was the victim of a vehicle hit and drag some months before in his
He received stitches for it as well. Yep.
Yes, in his capacity.
But does that come in? Is that your question?
That's my question.
Okay.
So does that get factored into the reasonableness of his actions?
Great question. The answer is yes and no. It comes in for the civil trial for reasonableness. However, it does not come in for the criminal trial. The criminal trial is much more generic, where it's just a reasonable officer, an ICE officer in that capacity. Because if you start going into his entire history, then it becomes subjective.
Mhm.
But with tort claims, which is what the civil liability will be, they do allow that, but not in the criminal context.
Excellent. Holland, I want to get your thoughts on this. I saw when Josh was talking early on and he was kind of going through the original facts of the case, and he said that they were interfering in operations, and I saw your head kind of twitch a little. So start there, if you will, on your feelings about what Renee Good was doing in the first place.
Okay, so Josh, I love you, and there are so many points that I will agree with what he said logistically.
I do want to point out quickly,
yes,
Josh only gave facts and law. He did not give us his opinion.
Yes, and he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. That's what I said, but even the law cannot be rid of passion. And so I am going to say this. I should never be there in the first place. So we can start the conversation and go, wait, we're not going to start it from the middle. We have to start it all the way back from this administration, this person that is called president, and ICE should not even be there. And I don't care. You can DM me, argue me all you want on that. Whether you want to say it's an officer of the law, you're an officer of ego, you're an officer of bullshit, and I'm going to call it what it is. That's my opinion. It doesn't matter what it's the law. It's my opinion. There's a lot of laws that are opinion-based, based off of people in power. So we can start there. That's my first thought on that. I should have never been there. My second thought is she was exercising a right to protest and oppose something that she believed in. On the media side of that, I will say this, depicting her in the media as one thing and then saying, look at her as a queer woman and she was aggressive and she pulled the car forward and pulled the car back. She didn't drive towards the officer. She didn't go directly towards him to run him over. She moved the car back. She moved the car forward. He was probably in the way or probably jumping in the way. And I'm not going to be funny. I looked at a lot of the angles. Okay. And as a law enforcement officer, Claudia, sometimes things go south. You jump at, I have been in parking lots where people have been crazy. The idea that someone decides that they are judge, jury, and penalty, whatever, prosecute in a split second with a gun is problematic, especially as an officer of an administration that is based on BS. They are not well trained. They are not listen, I have my thoughts on ICE, and we already know what those thoughts are. It's a capitalism grab. You would never guess, because while I understand whatever was written in the letter of the law, that doesn't make it right. And it doesn't make this justified. It makes it maybe defendable, right? It makes it maybe like, okay, you've got powerful people behind you defending this officer. But when you took an oath, you didn't take an oath to defend the public. You took an oath to pledge allegiance to a president. So we can start there. If you want to really have the conversation, start with the conversation. So I do not think that she, first of all, she didn't deserve to die the way that she died. She didn't deserve to be shot at. And also, as an officer, and I'm sure you can relate to this, it should be the last act of anything is to injure or murder, or not murder, but self-defense. It should be the last act. There should be a de-escalation period. There should be a disarming period. There should be shooting out the tires period. Anything that could take her if she was restricted, whatever the case is. But death in the middle of a street because you didn't like the way someone looked, or she backed up her car and they decided to drive off. I am sorry. If I was an attorney or could be an attorney, I will argue this point is that yes, Josh, it was freaking unreasonable because that person had every opportunity to de-escalate. He could have walked away. They could have got her tags. They could have put a warrant out for her arrest. They could have did a million other things if she was interfering. But instead, they took her life.
Let's talk about the point that you made about right to protest. So that is something that we have in our country that's very beautiful, is when we don't agree with something, we have the right to speak our mind.
We're supposed to, but we don't right now.
Josh, do we have the right to protest in a way that interferes with, and not just, let's say, ICE, but I saw a video recently of like people protesting in the middle of the street, and this poor guy was trying to get through to go pick up his kid from school, and they wouldn't get out of his way. So like, do we have the right to protest when we impede the freedoms of others?
So great questions. So in America, one of the greatest things is our First Amendment, which includes the right to protest, freedom of speech, and so on. But it does have limits. Freedom of speech does. You can't just protest anywhere you want. You actually have to get a permit oftentimes, and you have to go to a certain location in certain times, because what our society demands over anything is a lawful, orderly society. And one of the things that the First Amendment does not protect is impeding a lawful law enforcement function. And here, despite what Holland was saying regarding her opinion about the morality of the ICE apprehensions, the thing is, what they're doing is lawful. They are enforcing laws that are already on the books and have been on the books for decades. And protesting certainly is something that people can do, but it cannot impede a law enforcement function. And even if you go to the ACLU's website, they have a document, which I've read, to tell protesters what they can and can't do. And even on the ACLU's website, it'll say you cannot block law enforcement's movements. And that's what this person did. Not only did she do that, but she had a 2-ton weapon with her that she was driving. And Holland mentioned de-escalation. Well, certainly, let's talk about that. Joe Biden once said that, why don't officers shoot somebody in the leg and, to slow them down instead of shooting them in the head or something? Well, that's not how reality works. When you pull the trigger, you shoot to kill. You don't.
She didn't pull out a gun, Josh. She didn't pull out a gun. She backed up and she drove forward, not towards him, but away from him.
Sure. But I'm talking about
then shoot her down. I completely agree with you. She did not. A 2-ton. That's not a 2-ton weapon. It was a 2-ton vehicle that she was in, moving away from the officer. She did not pull out a gun on this man.
Hold on.
He pulled out a gun on her to shoot to kill.
Well, let's talk about facts that we both agree on.
Love you.
She wasn't backing away when she got shot. She was moving forward when she got shot, and she was
driving away.
But she hit him.
She hit the officer. That's something that.
Look at the camera footage. Look at the camera footage where he was standing, and then when she decided to pull away, him moving forward towards her. That is a difference. And that's when he decided to pull out his gun.
But you don't have enough time to de-escalate within that split second.
Murder is not the answer in that moment. Let her drive away and deal with her ass later. Excuse my language, but I mean, come on.
Well, that's going to be litigated. In Holland, I think that you're right that reasonable people should look at this and determine whether or not it's a crime. And I think that we can trust the system. We can trust a jury. If a jury says that that's murder, I will accept it. And I will say, fine, that's murder. But let them have the facts first. Let's not rush to judgment because we don't have all the facts yet. We haven't heard the witnesses who are on the ground. Many were law enforcement witnesses as well. And we do have the media on both sides who are trying to fan the flames here and inflame the passions and prejudice of people. I'm saying, we're the people. Let's keep our level heads here. The the politics on both sides want us to be angry at each other, but we're not going to get at the truth if we don't look at the objective facts, and we don't have all the facts yet.
Sure. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. But I will stand on my business with ICE shouldn't even be there in the first place. And I will leave my opinion there.
Sure. Again, that's a political opinion, like a political decision. And again, like I started out by saying that, the ICE apprehensions in these deep blue areas, does have a political component to it. There's no doubt about that. And we can argue about what the motive is, but the actions by law enforcement, by ICE officials, isn't illegal. What they are doing is not illegal in itself. Now, how they enforce it, if you shoot somebody, obviously that has to be investigated. But their actions themselves are of enforcing existing laws. Objectively, is not inherently illegal in and of itself.
Well, I hope they all can sleep at night, because whether it's illegal or not, 90% of it, if not more, is completely immoral based on what we are supposed to be standing for the United States of America and what we are a country for and about. It's immoral. Even just common sense humanity, it's immoral, whether it's illegal or not.
Well, there's two sides of the coin here. I mean, you have, a former president, Joe Biden, who, had essentially an open border policy where inviting in around reportedly 20 million people who are undocumented. And, they are, a lot of them on government assistance now. And on the other side of the coin, people are saying, well, that's unfair, that, they haven't, they weren't required to buy into a system. And, they are obtaining all of the benefits of citizenship without having to put anything into it.
I know, and I'm Josh. I am not trying. I know, because I know we need to wrap this up at some point. But here's the thing: we're talking about people. Like I speak 3 different languages. My accent changes depending on who I'm talking to. We're talking about people being pulled over and questioned. Are they an American citizen off of their language? If you don't think that this particular department that is legal is doing immoral and ridiculous things in a nation of immigrants, and I don't care what Joe Biden did, and if he let people in, that's perfectly fine. What Trump is doing to exercise his right as the executive, whatever, and using a department to then justify a murder based off of pulling someone over how they speak or what have you. Come on. That it's Josh, the whole department should not be here. I'm done. I'm done with that one. I'm sorry. I'm done with that one, because we can go back and forth. I think that's a different. I think it's a different show.
It definitely is. But I want to ask Josh one legal question, and then I want to circle back to this case before we're done.
Yes.
Josh, a lot of people have been comparing current ICE operations to Barack Obama ICE operations, or the number of deportations.
Well, they called him, remember, the deporter in chief. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the same? What's different?
Well, when Barack Obama was president, immigration wasn't really a political issue. Both sides were, pretty much saw immigration in the same eyes. I mean, Barack Obama famously said that if you come to this country, you're going to have to learn the language, and you're going to have to learn the customs, and you're going to have to work. Like, he literally said that. Chuck Schumer has said similar things. Joe Biden, before he was president, was very anti-immigration. So this only became political in 2016 after Donald Trump was elected the first time. So that's how we kind of ended up here with this politicized situation that unfortunately ends in this horrible situation.
Yeah. But the thing is that you can have decorum about immigration. You can have a strategic plan about, yes, come here, learn the culture, learn the language, do the work, pay your taxes, be a good citizen. Don't bring crime in. Don't bring your BS in. That's not what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump radicalized and made it a way to divide and conquer. He made it about race, colorism, country. He was happy. He's no problem. We already know this. Again, we're gonna have to break these segments up because there's so much to dissect here. And I'm saying this is because it's not because there's so many layers to this, and we know this, right? We're not ignorant. We know this. This was a white woman that was gunned down for whatever reason, and driving forward or driving backward by an emboldened department. That's what I think I just want to get back to. Like, this wasn't a department that feels like they are the police, the jury, the judge, and the executor. Like, that's what it feels like. Biden, Obama, and what they didn't do that. They had the system in place to make sure things were done the right way. This feels very, very, very different. Political, we can say political. I would say strategic and racist, and also making sure that the people that he wants to be taken down are taken down, and the people that he doesn't want here is not wanted here. And that comes to gender, that comes to sexuality, that comes to whatever agenda that this particular administration has. They're using a department to facilitate that. That's the problem here. And they're emboldened to do so without any type of accountability on the back end.
All right, let's head back to this case quickly. And this is going to be the last topic that we talk about regarding this case today. I want to talk about the victim's wife. So she was married previously to a man, has kids. I think the kid's father passed away. I don't know how, nothing related to any of this. She was married to a woman named Becca. So Becca was there when this incident happened. Josh talked about somebody else being in the vehicle. I believe that was Becca, who then got out of the vehicle and was walking around filming. Two things. So first off, she has put out a statement that I would like to read, and then I want to ask you guys a question. So here's her statement. This is per ABC News. Renee leaves behind 3 extraordinary children. The youngest is just 6 years old and already lost his father. I am now left to raise our son and to continue teaching him, as Renee believed that there are people building a better world for him. That the people who did this had fear and anger in their hearts, and we need to show them a better way. Here are my questions, and I'm going to ask both questions and then let you guys answer both. The first is, does Becca hold any accountability, legally or otherwise, for what happened? Because she says and I use coerce, not in an abusive way, she encouraged Renee to go that day. And you can hear her saying right before Renee moves forward something to the effect of, drive, baby, drive. So question 1 is, does she hold any accountability or responsibility, legally or otherwise? Question 2 is, people are so divided about this right now, to the point where I see on Facebook, like, if you don't believe what I believe, then unfriend me. And the last statement she says is, we need to show them a better way. So how do we honor this when we're so fired up that we just want to unfriend people that don't believe the same thing we do? Josh, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. And I didn't know that that she said that, and that brings warm feelings to my heart. And that reminds me of Charlie Kirk's wife, who had a very similar statement. And I think that is very American. The Judeo-Christian tradition to love your enemy and forgiveness. Now, when I look at the wife's actions, my first thought is, what are you doing there? You have 2 children who are young, and you're playing with matches here. And like, what happens when you play with matches, or fire? You get burned. And like, you have to always think about your children first, no matter what, and your family. And like, what do you think is the likely outcome when you push back against these ICE officials who are armed and dangerous? Like, do you think that there's no possibility that you're going to get hurt or injured and affect your children's lives? I mean, so my first instinct is, I can't believe that you would do this. My second response is, she speaks of fear and anger, but I ask myself, why are those two women out there? And I'm thinking fear and anger. So I really hope that she takes her own advice to heart and that she, in the future, puts her two children's lives as a priority, as opposed to her political convictions, which should always come second to your family and your children.
Holland, what are your thoughts on both questions? So, does Becca have any accountability? And how do we move forward when people are unwilling to even listen to an alternate viewpoint regarding this case?
So I'm going to go to the first point. Does Becca have accountability? That's going to be up for a judge and a jury to decide. I think if she instigated anything, had, whatever the video evidence is that Josh said, once we get more information, people will start to understand and piece the story together. I felt like nobody goes into a situation where they're trying to stand up for something thinking that they're going to be murdered by officers. I think that's where the protest aspect comes in. And Josh is right. There's so many things in place for people to be safe and know what the permits are. So, everyone's in the know. But I will say this. We can go back to civil rights movements, March on Selma, Washington. Everyone brought their children. There are children that were standing next to their parents who were giving speeches, people that literally stood up for what was right when it was wrong. So there is a generation, and Josh, whether you're privy to it or not, I love you to death, but there is a generation and a culture that had to bring their children, introduce them to standing up to something because it was right, to show them the path forward. And until you've experienced that and understood what that looks like or feels like, then you may or may not know. So I don't think maybe it's to that dynamic in the situation, to be honest with you. And I'm going to agree with you on that. Yeah, she should have probably left her kids at home. You're running into ICE because in this day and age, you just can't do that. Like, there's just no telling what an officer is going to do or not do, where they come from, if they have home training or whatever, to just be respectful of the public. But I do not believe that you separate the two ideas, because there has to be a teaching or teachable moment for the next generation in all situations, whether it's ICE, the civil rights, Martin Luther King, Charlie Kirk, all those things. Everyone, we all have to witness something at some point that changes us. My son is 24 years old, and he has different beliefs, and he knew who Charlie Kirk was. Never went to an event, but if my son had been there, that would be a teachable moment for my son, right? Like I think about it as a parent. I think about it as someone that cares about the truth and cares about progression and having the conversation that we're having and moving forward. So I don't know if that's like we talk about child endangerment a lot, what have you, but I do believe that, if she was an instigator and it's proven to be that, then she's absolutely culpable, right? She's culpable. She said, "Drive, baby, drive." Maybe that was her trying to get her wife out of there. Maybe that was like, "Go, baby, go." Just like march down that bridge, go across that, sitting at a freaking cafe, getting dogs, attacked on you and hoses at you, and you're getting beaten down by there. Sometimes they're like, "No, sit there, you take it." There's a different way of looking at things in these conversations, that there are sometimes brutalities and reasonable moments that have to happen for points to be made. And unfortunately, to your point, Josh, Charlie Kirk was one of them. And he said that, and I don't know the exact quote, so don't kill me if I say this wrong. Sometimes a life has to be taken or something, like to get your point. It's something he said. And I was like, did he just prophesy over his own death? Like things like that have to happen. Martin Luther King did it. There's a million. I'm not comparing any of these people. Let me just be very clear. But I'm just saying that whether the children were involved or not, there's always a teachable moment. And we are in the age of technology where whether they're there physically or not, they're going to see it. The video's out there. The moments are out there. And so I can agree with most of everything Josh is saying, Claudia, what you said. I can still disagree and say, let's have the bigger conversation about that. So sorry to be long-winded about that point, but that's where I stand on that.
No worries. And to be clear, the children were not present at this incident. So,
okay. They were not. Yeah, okay.
I think Josh's point was, you've got kids at home.
Oh, you've got kids at home. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes,
like,
sorry.
You've got kids at home.
Well, but here's the thing: we all have somebody at home. So, but we and then we're standing up for something that we have at home. That, like, think about it that way. We're all standing up for something that we have. Our home, our business, or whatever. And if some agency or some person or some ridiculous dictatorship or wannabe dictator is disrupting what we're trying to do as just regular ass citizens, then we get to stand up to that. And maybe we don't get a permit, or maybe they didn't have the knowledge to get a permit, as Josh was saying. But if they wanted to jump in, that's their prerogative. Did they want to go in and just think that on that day that they would lose their life because they were trying to exercise what we thought were our rights as American citizens? Because we now have not become American citizens. We're like literally living in a third world country, or dictatorship, and it's crazy to me. So
Holland, you said something very interesting. You said that if the passenger, instigated somehow, that your feelings might be different. So
absolutely,
and that's interesting because when you said that, kind of a light bulb went off in my head, and that is, let's say that the officer did not shoot his gun, and that everything happened that we know of, but there was no shooting, and then she was later pulled over and arrested. Could she have been the driver, been charged with attempted murder? And if the answer is yes to that question, then you know that the officer's actions were correct. And the passenger, can she be then charged with attempted murder for encouraging the driver to hit the officer? So, you made me think, like, there's another aspect to this. She may actually get charged if she's the front passenger and telling the driver, let's just say that she said hit him or something like that. Like, I think that she could be charged. So you have to ask yourself this question: if the shooting didn't occur, could the driver still be charged with attempted murder because the cop or the law enforcement officer was in front of the vehicle? I don't know, but it's something that we need to think about.
I'm sorry. Can I say one thing, Claudia, before Josh? That's why I love you, because because that's your job. That's your job, right? As a lawyer and a defense attorney and attorney, and then you, Claudia. But that's why. And then for me, the audience, that's like all these pieces that you have to go. Well, wait a minute, and how do you? Not 6'7". I didn't mean to do that. But it's this. It's that. That's the conversation. That right there is why I'm like, go, Josh, go.
That's basically what I was going to say. Is, Josh, that is such a great point, and a way to kind of flip it on its side and start from that perspective to get people to look at what happened. So one thing that I think we can all agree on, though, Renee Good's death is absolutely tragic. It's incredibly unfortunate. She should not have died that day. So I think we can all agree on that. And with that note, we are going to close out for today. We are going to have some great new cases for you next week. or the week after. We don't really know yet because this is our first episode, but we're super excited to continue to share our thoughts, opinions, arguments with you guys here on No Contest. For Josh Kolsrud, Holland Reid, I'm Claudia King. We'll see you later.